EBC Unpack. Today we're going to be diving into the real substance of the Sermon on the Mount. I hope you've enjoyed our kind of big picture look at what Jesus is doing. But today we are going to be diving into the meat, into the substance, getting into those first 16 verses of the Sermon on the Mount. So yeah, I'm really pumped to unpack this with you.
You're fine.
Unpack, to kind of labour it. Because the better the joke, the more laboured it is, the better the joke. I learn from the best when it comes to those kind of things. So if you have a Bible, open it up with me. We're using the ESV, but you can use any good English translation. So let me read it, and we're going to see what it is we find. This is how Jesus opens. So seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you." First, an obvious question, is it pronounced blessed or blessed?
I think it depends if you're in an old-timey movie.
Okay.
Or
because I've always said blessed, but that's because, I don't know. I live in an old-timey movie, apparently.
It's old school.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well,
I'd probably do it too.
Blessed, I don't know.
It's both.
It is, well, it has to be one. It can't be both.
Sometimes it's both.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first. It's both.
Advertisements.
Advertisements.
It's the same.
No, sure, okay. Let's go I'm going to go with blessed. I'm going to stick to it because I like the old-timiness. Let's start with that word, I guess. Blessed. Classically, a difficult word to translate. Lots written on that word, so the Greek being makarios. What's Jesus getting at with this word? And is blessed the best translation? Is blessed?
Yeah, so that's the wrestle, isn't it? Is that there is no word in the English language which means all of the things that this word means. It's a shame because it comes up quite a lot in a passage. And so,
blessed.
How you translate it kind of changes the flavour a bit, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
that's true.
It's probably, even though we can't translate it with a single word, by talking about all of the words that people try to use to translate it, you probably catch the vibe of what it originally meant.
Yeah.
So, how does it get translated?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So the main one that I know
one
is
suggestion, which is blessed.
Blessed? No, blessed.
Blessed.
Yeah. So there's blessed / blessed. The other way I've seen, which I can't remember who does this, is the KJV, is happy.
That's a common one, yeah.
Yeah, happy.
Those are the two main ones.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think neither of those things get the full picture. The other one that I've heard recently, someone come out with, guy, Matthew Scholar over in the States called someone Pennington.
I think all scholars should be named Pennington.
It's
very scholarly
the
name.
best scholar name. His suggestion, and he says, look, this isn't perfect. It's just another way of coming at it. Is flourishing. And what he's trying to get at is that the idea of blessed,
fortunate.
Yeah, the idea of blessed, it can, I suppose, in our thinking of it, it can feel almost transactional. Like I do the thing, you bless me. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's too kind of transactional.
Yeah. Whereas happy captures the emotion of it. It's but misses some of the other things. But that emotion is present in Makarios. So you've got an irony that comes out there, like when Jesus says, "Happy are the ones who are persecuted." You're like, well, hang on, he's being wordsy there. He's being tricky, and that doesn't come across so much.
How can that be true? Yeah. Whereas this idea of flourishing, what it's getting at, I think, is that Jesus is trying to get at this idea of there is a way that the universe is built, that when we align ourselves with it, life works best. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There is this kind of this is the path to true deep life. This is where we as people will flourish if we align ourselves with these these laws of the kingdom, I guess. And so it's not just it's not just I do the morning and then I get the blessed. It's when we I suppose allow ourselves to mourn over the brokenness of the world. We're positioning ourselves to receive God's grace in that moment, aren't we?
I think that's probably the best way to say it, isn't it? The ones who are blessed are the ones who are receiving God's favour. And that means that they are fortunate. It means that they are happy. It means that they're aligned with the way the world is meant to be. And yet, what we're seeing in the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount is there's a tension here. That those who are receiving God's favour in this world aren't the healthy, wealthy and wise. No. They're the people whose circumstances might indicate to our eyes that they are not the blessed, that they are not the fortunate, that they're not the happy.
It's the ever-present tension, I think, in this picture that he's illustrating, right? Is that there's the world's version of blessed, and then there's the ultimate version of blessed, and they clash.
They don't look the same,
Yeah. One's easy for us to understand. One, we have to almost deprogram ourselves from the here and the now thinking and open up our eyes to the spiritual realities that Jesus is trying to get across here.
It's almost like he's describing a kingdom.
It's almost
which
like
is
that.
different to the one
like an upside down one.
Yeah,
it's counter. It's counterintuitive at every turn, right?
Can you imagine though what it would be like to be like? Let's say you and I are first century Jewish peasants, and
just give me a sec. Just bring myself in that moment.
More frontlets.
Okay. Yeah.
And
big beard. All right, carry on.
We've been waiting for this Messiah character to come along for a long time. We've been reading our Bibles and hearing the hope of the promises of God. And then word comes to our little village in the middle of the region of Galilee that he's around. That there's this guy who's working miracles. He teaches with the authority of God. He's driving out demons. We start to think to ourselves, this is the end game. God's going to deliver on the kingdom. We have our own ideas about what that kingdom
Rome is. In for a shellacking, if that's the case.
So we put on our sandals and we get our, what's the Jewish version of a rucksack, an ancient Jewish rucksack? We waltz our Matilda down the road and we get to this hill in the middle of nowhere where this Jesus guy is teaching. And so we're like, right, we're going to hear about the
crowd,
kingdom. And we expect him to sit down and say certain things. We gather around and away he goes. Blessed are the poor in spirit.
He doesn't mention Rome. Or he doesn't he starts with blessed are the poor in spirit.
Is that...
Because this is the kingdom of heaven.
Is this encouraging or discouraging?
Yeah. I think immediately it's going to be discouraging because it's totally counter to what you're expecting, right? You get the gap between your expectations and what you're watching happen in front of you. And so immediately you're disorientated.
All my hopes that are on Caesar, get out of here.
Yeah.
This is not what I want to hear.
No. What you want to hear is Willie Wallace, right?
Freedom!
That's right, that's what you're expecting. Yeah, and he's a miracle worker as well, right? So he's actually, like he could something might happen here. Right? And God's clearly put his spirit upon him, he's empowered by God, and if the message he brings is, repent because the kingdom is near.
At the same time,
I
think it's actually quite a gentle and gracious start.
Of course.
I mean, compared to...
I'm just thinking like initial reaction, right? It's like,
compared to where this sermon is going.
Correct. As we heard week one when we read it all out at once.
He's being very kind.
And we all felt all those moments where we thought, Jesus.
Maybe another way to think of it is, imagine we're not both Jewish peasants. I'm a...
Hold up. I put myself there and I'm just like, whiplash.
I'm a Jewish cheesemaker and you're a Pharisee.
Okay.
And we've both come along to hear the same sermon. So you're a part of the religious elite.
I know my Bible backwards. I got authority.
People respect you. They come to you to ask.
I tie that in my mint.
The tough questions. They come to you when they want to understand the word Makarios. And I'm just working day to day so I can feed my family. And we come along, and what's more, you have made my life harder.
It's true. I've been laying burdens upon you. Saying you better obey God or else.
But you haven't been willing to help me obey God.
Yep.
You haven't. You've made God seem frightening instead of gracious.
Yeah. And I've been labouring the obedience without any kind of God's character.
Yeah. And so I still want Caesar gone because I'm a good Jew and I want Israel to be Israel.
That's right.
But at the same time, he's describing a religion which is very different to the one that you describe.
It's true.
It's
This is me, the Pharisee, by the way.
Yeah. So it's not hard to imagine. And the thing is that blessed are the poor in spirit. Well, I tell you what, I feel poor in spirit. And so he's telling me God has favour for me, or I've been persecuted for wanting righteousness instead of fake religion.
Yeah.
And he's telling me that God's taken notice of that.
Yeah. And that matters to God.
That's pretty encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the what's the other one that he said? The peacemakers.
Blessed are the peacemakers.
Yeah.
For they shall be called sons of God.
And the ones who are going to see God. This is kind.
Merciful.
This is encouraging. This is in fact, what he's done is something I think only Jesus can really do. With the same words, he has cut you down and built me up. It's pretty incredible.
The Pharisees.
Yeah.
Undercuts the Pharisees.
Undercuts the hard, unloving, ungracious legalist.
Cold religion. Yeah.
And takes the meek and the weak and the oppressed.
Yeah.
And says that God has got... And it's not just oppressed or meek in the way that we might think, not just politically meek, but religiously, the poor in spirit.
That's right. Yeah.
He's lifted up the powerless but faithful believer.
Yeah.
Who has been waiting for the people with power to behave themselves and has been left disappointed for a long time. Yeah. This is fire.
I think and the further you get into the ministry of Jesus, the more you see him kind of turn his turrets towards the Pharisees.
That's right.
To blast them away because of the way they have, you've mentioned before, laying up burdens upon people that they cannot bear, saying that this is how you're going to receive God's favour, is by getting your act together. And Jesus comes and says, no, it's the state of that person's heart that is going to position them to receive the blessed life. Yeah. Not their outward conformity to the... Yeah. But then he's also, next episode, right, he's going to say things like, not a jot of the law is going to pass away. So there is a tension we're going to kind of get to unpack next. But he's very, very, very willing, isn't he, to stand in opposition to a kind of what we think of as outward religion. Yeah.
So he's describing a kingdom.
Yeah.
He's describing the principles the kingdom work by.
Yeah.
And those principles are upside down. They're the reverse of how we think it works. They're certainly the reverse of how Pharisaical Mike thinks it works, right?
Hey.
Theoretical, illustrative.
Haven't we stopped role-playing? I feel like we have.
I don't remember when we...
Just give me a moment.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah.
He's describing a kingdom which is... I think what makes it shocking is, really what he's saying is the people who God approves of are not the people whose lives look successful.
No.
Necessarily,
yeah.
And that's, I suppose what's surprising about that is, isn't there something in us that just thinks, if God is really with me, won't my life be successful?
Yeah.
Isn't that the...
Easy and...
The obvious. If I go to school and I behave and I study hard, I'll get good marks and the teacher will like me.
That's right, yeah.
And if I be
transaction. It's the transactional view of God, right?
If I be good and my brother or sister isn't so well behaved, then I get the approval of the parents and they get the scorn and the punishment.
Yeah.
But he's saying that the people who will see God will hunger and thirst. Will be persecuted.
Yeah. Will feel poor in spirit, feel that kind of spiritual bankruptcy, know their own brokenness, and
really, that first one, the blessed are the poor in spirit. Really, tell me what you think here.
Okay.
Because one of the questions we had was, is this 9 versions of the same promise, or is this 9 different promises? I think I'm more in camp saying they're describing similar things. How about you?
I think so. I think of it as a diamond with 9 sides. It's the one thing, but you can see it from different angles. But so I've always characterized these 9 things by the first one. I don't know if that's just instinctive.
I was about to do the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think that's instinctive. Maybe it's just because it comes first, but I feel like it's they all fit underneath it. It's the principle, right? Is this poor of spiritness that is like the other ones make sense in light of that, I think, most.
Which means the way to God's favour, the thing that shows that we have God's favour, isn't our wealth, isn't our success, isn't our impressiveness, but the poverty of our spirit. What does that mean?
Our own poverty.
Spiritual poverty.
Spiritual poverty
is the road to God's blessing. This is hang on.
How do we...
Well, now, that doesn't sound right.
Whereas God's blessing is our own spiritual poverty.
How could that be true?
You can see why he takes aim at the Pharisees, right? Because they claim spiritual riches, right? They don't know their spiritual poverty. They're puffing themselves up, Jesus says, with knowledge and wisdom. Yeah.
Spiritually, they are self-confident and self-sufficient.
Yeah, autonomous. Spiritually autonomous. And Jesus says, no, blessed are those who have need spiritually. Those who know their own brokenness. Those who keep hitting the wall of their own sin and knowing that they're powerless to change that. Those who are, frustrated with the world and the way it's failing to look like the kingdom, right? That sense of this isn't how it should be. Yeah. Yeah, I think... Yes, I think it's interesting we both thought that. I'm not sure if anyone else thinks that, but certainly that first one for me has always been that, almost paradigmatic. Is that a word?
Paradigmatic?
Paradigmatic. Is there a G in the... Obviously, when you spell it, I thought it was silent.
It is when you say
paradigmatic. Later. Yeah, that's right. This is not for online chats. Blessed. Yeah, I don't remember where we're going now.
You were talking about how
Poor spirit. Yeah,
poverty and spirit could possibly be the road to God's blessing.
Yes. So, what does that look like for us? Like, what do we do with that?
So, we're now no longer first century Jewish peasants.
We are
21st century Brisbane peasants.
Okay. Yeah.
/ pastors.
Speak for yourself. Yeah.
And I'm pretty peasant. Yeah.
Peasant mystic. Like that?
Not particularly.
Peasant mystic. Well, I hope I got at least one chuckle.
You will. They'll comment. So we're listening to this Sermon on the Mount, and we're hearing Jesus describe a kingdom which is different to the nation in which we live. And it runs by different principles to how we think both, how we are inclined to think both nation and religion should work.
Yeah.
This is not the rules of life. This is the opposite to how life is meant to work.
Yeah.
The people who are persecuted for doing the right thing aren't the ones who are blessed.
Yeah. Jesus
are
says. Well, Jesus says they are, but yeah, not in our world.
Do you find that you clash with this? Like when you read this and you actually just, okay, let's turn this sermon, and I'm now no longer just learning what Jesus said, but I'm listening to what Jesus said to me. Some of these things are hard to believe, I reckon.
They are hard to believe because our reality looks so different to them. And yet I don't know if you would agree with this, in time, I've begun to see them to be true. Do you know what I mean?
Tell me about that.
Well...
So what... Give me an example.
So my brain reads it and goes, well, that's just not how the world works, right? But then as life has progressed, I've seen that God does bring blessing to that space, right? That through that door of poverty, spiritual poverty, comes. Peter talks about in 1 Peter, right, that if we humble ourselves under the hand of God, He'll raise us up. It starts with the humbling before it moves to before it moves to that, do you know what I mean? Like it's you look at the world and it clashes with what Jesus is saying here. Then, but I think I don't know. As I've believed these and attempted to live out these things in my life, you feel it to be true, right? I don't know if that makes sense.
Can you think of it? Does it think of a time where this comes crashing home?
I think any time you kind of come face to face with your own spiritual brokenness and sin, and that knowledge that you are so far short of that ideal, the holiness that God calls us to. When you sit and you feel that gap, it is unpleasant, right? But those have been the richest times. I've known God's grace the sweetest, right?
Come on, let's get personal. Can you think of a time in your life where God has decided to bring you low for your benefit? Even the last 12 months.
Oh. What about you? Well, I think...
For example...
Go on. I'm a slow processor, and so I'm like running a Celeron over here, do you know what I mean? Like, is that what they call? Is that how you say it? Celeron?
Yeah,
very slow processor, like underneath an i3.
Pentiums.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a very specific joke.
It's a very slow processor in a computer. That's what I'm trying to say.
like a abacus.
Like an abacus, that's right.
I think of this year, 2020 is stupid, and I don't like it.
How so? Give me one example of how 2020 is stupid.
It was hard to buy toilet paper.
Oh yeah, okay, no, that's enough.
Yeah, and hand soap.
Only more though.
Yeah, and
praise the Lord for that fact.
Yeah, just in case I bought a couple of tins of food and then it didn't all fall apart and I had to eat tinned food.
Well,
it's hard times when you can't get fresh organic strawberries every day of the week. There's been some stuff this year, right?
Yeah.
There's a cloud of uncertainty. There's the worry, the suffering. My parents are in the age where this thing was a big risk to them, and
same. Yeah.
We don't know how this is going to affect church, and for us that means employment as well as just our church family. And how many people do we know who've lost work, and so there's a worry that adults carry with that. I had a child born in March of 2020.
Yes, that is rough. Yeah, I said this before. That is rough.
And it's an unusual month of my life. And somehow, simultaneously, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
And I've heard you talk about Larissa having a similar year.
Yeah, I speak on behalf of my wife. She's had a similar kind of experience of this is not necessarily being awesome, but finding so much joy in the Lord.
This is the happiest I've been in years.
Yeah.
And it's not because the circumstances of life are abundant. In fact, this is the hardest year we've had in some time. It's because in the middle of all of that, I certainly have, and my family have reached out to God more frequently and more often.
Yeah.
Poverty of spirit, and become more dependent on His grace, and more content.
Yeah.
As a result.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see how this works.
More content to live in that space of knowing our need.
In some ways, I feel like have you ever started getting fit? Let's just pick one form of fit.
I ran a half marathon one day. I remember that. Yeah.
When you're in that zone where you're living in the way that you need to live in order to run a half marathon, pushing the boundaries a little bit further only hurts this much. And but when you start to live the life of ease, and the next time you go for a 5 kilometre run, that 5 kilometre run is going to hurt.
You see the end. Yeah.
A lot more.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, in some ways, I think what this is doing is calling us to live in a way which is hardest at the beginning.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like that. That if the way to God's blessing is to be poor in spirit, then what I should be doing as a result of that is to be embracing my spiritual poverty and just staring it at the face every day.
And just living there.
And not leaving, not giving up. Yeah, making that my daily concept of myself.
Yeah.
Making that my daily knowledge of how the world works.
It sounds crazy, doesn't it? Like imagine if every day I reminded myself that I was going to die.
I'm nothing without
and that I was helpless in this world to achieve anything of purpose.
Yeah.
And that I'm just entirely in need of Him.
It sounds dour. It sounds sad and depressing.
It does sound sad and depressing and bleak. And yet Jesus says, and I believe, right, that's what happiness is, because it's like you're positioning yourself underneath the waterfall of God's grace. Yeah. And like if you just stay in that little spot there underneath the waterfall, which is where you feel needy.
Yeah.
Needy, man. Can you think of anything that is less popular in our day than needy?
Yeah.
I'm in need all the time. It's like, but if you stay there and you know that, then you just keep your hands open for God's grace. You're gonna see that the Sermon on the Mount is true. The beatitudes are real. There is blessing in that spot there when we know we need Him. Yeah, it's going to shape prayer, which we're going to get to in chapter 6. It's going to shape our relationships. We're going to get to in chapter 7, I think. It's going to shape the way we interact with the law, Old Testament law, which is next video, right? It's going to shape so much of our life when we live there in that spot where we just know our need. And I think that's rung true personally as well. Being very happy to feel that. Yeah, learning to be content in that spot. And Paul talks about it's in that moment that I'm strongest. When I'm weak, I'm strong, because that's when God's grace is upon me.
Yeah.
in a way that is spiritually profound, in a way that blows all our categories out of the water, right?
Yeah. And I suppose the benefit of a year like this one is we haven't had a choice. Right?
We've been forced into it. Yeah,
Our comforts have been compromised and are no longer available.
We can still ignore it. Like we've been forced into, like, our circumstances have made us confront it, but we can still like pretend that it's not there.
Yeah.
But I think it's only reasonable that we like stare in the face now and go, our world can blow up. Like, genuinely can. Like, we're just talking about India and China, right? It's
the two biggest countries on earth.
The world seems volatile, and not just politically, but like in every sense of the word. Life is short. There's pandemic, like economically, like there's so much evidence that we are helpless, right, in our world. I think it's time to like
people might not be the solution to this.
People might not be the solution to this. That's right. Like, I don't know if we can reason or educate our way out of these problems anymore.
We are unable. We are weak. We hunger and thirst for righteousness because we don't see it all the time.
Yeah.
And so where do we turn for these things?
Yeah.
Not to ourselves.
Not to ourselves, yeah.
But to a higher power.
Yeah.
Which is offensive and glorious.
Offensive and glorious and beautiful and confronting and, pushes all our buttons.
Yeah.
all our autonomous kind of self-independent buttons that don't want to be that, right?
I think isn't one of the weird things about it too that it's like, I mean, Hebrews says, right, that there's no discipline which seems pleasant while it's taking place. Okay, absolutely,
that's right. Discipline is supposed to hurt. Yeah,
but later on, it produces the harvest, and that's totally true. I can absolutely believe that as someone who trusts and follows Jesus, that at the end of this year, I will be nearer to him and closer to him, and he will be dearer to me, and I will be more obedient to him and quicker to believe him at the end of this year than I was at the beginning of this year. And yet, if you asked me if I wanted to do this year again, the answer would be not on your Nelly.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I feel like
there is a
few of
war.
those years in a row. Like, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
But it did a thing in me, that's for sure.
I'm glad that it happened.
God used it profoundly in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll keep the baby and leave everything else. Yeah.
She's a keeper, I reckon.
She's nice.
Yeah. She's got a sweet smile. Let's maybe transition to the next little chunk, because we haven't had a look at that yet, the salt and light part.
Yeah.
He changes gears, right?
Okay.
So we've done the beatitudes. Again, we could spend forever, but we won't. We could do them one by one, but we won't. Salt and light. This is what Jesus says. I think he takes these principles and he puts it corporately. Like, what does this look like when people live this way? Do you know what I mean? Like, what happens when a group of people come together and then they follow the king together and their life is shaped by these kingdom principles? He says, you are, this is you plural by the way, so he's talking to the crowd, his followers, you are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp or put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. All right, guys, that's all we have time for today. We'll be back next episode, and we'll be digging into the next chunk of the Sermon on the Mount. I'm so glad to have you on. Please, I just encourage you once more, dig in to the sermon yourself. Spend some time in it, meditating on it. Maybe even give it a crack at memorizing chunks of it, especially this front end. Just such a good idea to get stuck in yourself. And just really invite you to get involved in the conversation. Talk about the sermon with your friends like we're doing here, right? And how it applies to us. But we'll see you next week.